Hello, today we are going to discuss poems written by Derek Walcott. Derek Walcott was a St. Lucian poet belonging to Caribbean islands. In the poems, Derek Walcott takes up the theme of colonialism. So, in one poem, St. Lucia's First Communion, the poet writes that when Caribbean islands were occupied by, as a colony by whites, by Britishers, at that time the blacks were forced to follow their festivals, the Christian festivals, and even little black children who didn't know what the festival was all about, they also had to follow the practices. So in this poem, the poet is really concerned about the fate of little black children. He says that they are made to stand in front of sun's heat rays and they have to just follow the orders. So what he wants is, he wants to take all those black children somewhere where there shouldn't be any oppression, where they should feel free, where they should not feel the prejudice and evil of whites. This is what he wants. So this is the main theme of the poem, St. Lucia's First Communion. Another poem is White Magic. In this poem also, Derek Walcott says that the whites, they copy our myths, they copy the myths of the blacks, they copy the mythical characters of the blacks, and they call it literature. When the mythical characters belong to blacks, then they call it ignorance. And when they copy the mythical characters, then the whites call them literature. So that is the white magic. Another poem written by Derek Walcott is Eulogy for Wh Oden. In this poem, the poet is remembering Wh Oden, who was a great poet, and Derek Walcott writes that the future poets will always remember Wh Oden for the great poetry that he had written and for the themes of his poetry also. So this poem is all dedicated to Wh Oden. And then in another poem, Elsewhere, in this poem Derek Walcott writes that there is sorrow and torture and violence everywhere in the world. He gives various examples where people are suffering a lot. Many women are now tired of weeping. Those women whose husbands work on oceans and then they die whenever the storms or some mishappenings occur. And then at some places many people are killed, and killed in large number, and at other places writers are censored. They are not allowed to write what they want to write. So there are many places in the world where people are tortured and oppressed. So this poem is about that. And then he writes a poem, Ruins of a Great House. In this poem, the poet is remembering that past time when Caribbean islands were under Britishers. So here Derek Walcott is remembering, the poet is remembering that there was a time when Britishers used to rule that place. There is a big house over there that earlier belonged to whites, and now they have gone, but the remains are still there. The house is now all damaged. It's in the condition is of ruins. The house has been ruined by the time when no one has still occupied that house. And the poet writes that at present the house is in a very bad condition. the nature, the lizards roam around in the house, and everything is in a state of destruction. But earlier there used to be white girls all around the house, and they used to protect themselves with iron grills. Perhaps they wanted to protect themselves from the guilt also, because they must be having the guilt of occupying other people's land. And then the poet writes that many people must have got killed over here. The slaves, particularly the African slaves who were brought here for work, they all must have got killed here. And he says that it was a very difficult time for African slaves, and this whole thing of creating empire was infectious, like leprosy. So many powerful countries wanted to build their empire, and in that process they used to oppress the weaker countries, and they used to dominate them, and so many people suffered because of that. And in the end of this poem, the poet becomes compassionate and ends it in a positive note, that the Britishers who occupied Caribbean islands, they were themselves a colony. Once upon a time they were a colony of Romans. So and the poet writes that perhaps this is the norm, that one powerful country has to dominate the weaker country. So this is the poem Ruins of a Great House, a very beautiful poem in which he has the imagery of dead limes, the lime plantations earlier, and so many other symbols and metaphors he has used to describe that particular time when Caribbean islands were occupied by Britishers, and now only the rotten things are left. I mean, the empire is no more there, but the destruction is still there. It is visible, and it's all in a rotten state. And then there is a poem, The Castaway. In this poem, Derek Walcott writes that the people of Caribbean islands feel that they have been left alone. There are no countries who are helping them, and they look for some help outside. They are looking for some help, but they are not getting any help from other countries. So the people of Caribbean islands feel as if they are castaways, as if they have been left alone. And another poem, Far Cry from Africa. This is also a very important poem. In this poem, the poet writes that the revolt, the uprising, Mau Mau uprising, that happened in Kenya in 1952. The poet is remembering that incident, and he is saying that he belongs to Africans, he belongs to that country, his grandparents belong to that country, but he loves English language also. So, and moreover his grandparents, some of them were whites also. So there is white as well as black blood in him, and he cannot choose one. He loves English language, he loves Africans also. So whom should he choose? Now in Mau Mau uprising in 1952 in Kenya, many Africans were killed by whites, and because that was the revolt, and in the revolt which was by Kikuyu tribe of Africa, many Africans were killed, and now that hurts Derek Walcott. That's why he writes Far Cry from Africa, because he's feeling that hurt for Africans. So he says that it is very difficult to bear that so many innocent Africans, Kikuyu tribal people, were killed during that revolt, the Mau Mau uprising. So this poem is all about that how the whites, they have always oppressed blacks, and they have only killed them and just justified their killings also, that it is their colonial policy to kill those people. So mainly the themes of Derek Walcott's poems are related to colonialism and how the blacks, they had to suffer a lot during the white empire regime. Thank you.